From the studios of Ave Maria Radio in Ann Arbor, this is Veterans Radio. And now, here's your host, Gary Lillie.
Good morning. Good morning to all our troops out there protecting our protecting our country. Good morning to my veteran brothers and sisters. Welcome home to all of you. Good morning, America. And also good morning to our friends down in Tasmania and Australia. I know you're listening. It's awfully late at night, but we appreciate it. Listening in on the internet. Good morning to all and welcome to Veterans Radio, which is brought to you by Ave Maria Studios in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Bob, we've got a show today that might be very controversial, might not. It's one that a lot of veterans, Vietnam veterans, are going to be pleased with. And it'll be one that a lot of Iraq, Afghanistan vets are going to be pleased with. It's about Winter Soldier and Winter Soldier 2. Those are public hearings that were organized to talk about the atrocities being committed by our troops. And we're going to find out how factual those hearings were. Good. I should have said... I'm talking about the air boss, the old airborne guy.
Oh, yes, I know.
Bob, don't call me Legs Gould.
It's a little bit delayed, but that's all right, Gary. Welcome this morning. Did you have your coffee?
Barely. I've got about two-thirds of it here, and it's
you have to meet me down at the Big Boy. And
this is my first time back on after my trip to Vietnam. I came back all fired up and going to put together a show on it. It's something that I recommended to all who can do it. I know everybody has different emotional scars. Mine are different, and the trip to Vietnam was the greatest cure I've ever gone through.
Well, I want to welcome everybody listening to us from coast to coast and around the world, and have a good Earth Day today. I don't know. Should you say Happy Earth Day or Good Earth Day or what? I'm not sure what to say.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth Day. Yeah. There you go. Okay.
Every day is Earth Day for me. I live out in the country.
If you ever say happy, how can you go wrong?
That's right. Be happy. Don't worry. Be happy.
Bingo.
We're going to talk about veteran stuff, right? Are you through?
Well, we have somebody standing by, so
good.
Fire away.
Tell me who we have.
Mr. Brad Cook. And Mr. Cook is waiting to come on Veterans Radio.
Good morning, Brad. You're with the Veterans of Modern Warfare. Is that not right? Brad Cook? Brad Cook, this is Gary Lillie. I understand you're with Veterans of Modern Warfare?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good deal. Tell us a little bit about Veterans of Modern Warfare. Most people probably haven't heard of your organization. They've heard of the VFW, the Vietnam Veterans of America, American Legion, and all of the others. What is the Veterans of Modern Warfare?
Veterans of Modern Warfare is an organization that began in September of 2006. It was started by some Gulf War veterans who felt that there was a bit of a gap serving veterans after Vietnam. So basically they've got started. We service all veterans that have served at least one day in uniform from August 2nd, 1990 to present day. It is a national organization. We're the first chapter in Michigan. There's currently about 14 chapters across the country right now, and still growing, of course.
Sure.
And
how many members do you have?
I currently have approximately 82 members.
Is that Michigan or all told?
Nope, that's just Michigan.
Okay. And how do people, there is a real need. I know when we came back from Vietnam, we didn't really relate to the guys that were in wars ahead of us, and I suspect that you guys are going through the same thing. We Vietnam vets are doing our best to take you under our wings and help you out so you don't make the same mistakes we did, but it's better always to be amongst your peers.
Absolutely is correct. My particular chapter actually was spawned from a Vietnam veterans chapter 154 here in Mount Clemens, and we work real closely with them. They're kind of our big brothers, and we look for all of their assistance because, like you said, you've kind of done the groundwork, and we're the pioneers of helping veterans in these present times. And that's we rely on them for a lot of assistance, as well as beginning and building our own organization.
You have a good group of mentors there. I know a lot of the guys from Chapter 154. At one time, they were the largest in the United States with over 1,200 members. The projects they have going on are astounding, and taking the young vets under their wing is something that's near and dear to their heart. I know it. But you guys have a fundraiser coming up. Tell us about it.
We have a fundraiser for a young man by the name of Alex Knapp. The fundraiser is Saturday, April 26th. On March 14th, about 3 days approximately before Alex was due to come home, his vehicle was involved with an IED explosion in Iraq, and unfortunately Alex lost both of his legs. So, of course, he's currently at Walter Reed Hospital. He'll be undergoing probably many surgeries as well as rehabilitation. And there's been some other bad things that have happened to the family. Alex's father, Eric, he is suffering with cancer right now, and he's been unable to work for quite a while. And so the fundraiser right now is to really help the family. Alex's mom, Jeanette, she's in Walter Reed. She's been there since Alex has arrived back in the States, as well as his dad. And I just found out the other day his dad did have to come home for some testing for his conditions.
So their immediate needs are probably money. Is that correct?
Yes. Their immediate need, of course, is to make sure that they are able to operate the household while mom and dad are continuously spending their time and their much-needed time with Alex during his whole ordeal at Walter Reed.
Well, there's one thing about the Detroit area and southeast Michigan area. It's an area with heart, and we're going to call on people to show that they have heart. Tell us what the fundraiser is going to be, where it's going to be, and what people can do.
Well, it's going to be in Shelby Township. That's Alex's hometown. It's at a VFW post. It's on 8311 Wilson Drive in Shelby Township. And it's from 1 in the afternoon to 7 p.m. And it's a small VFW hall. They wanted to keep it in Alex's town, so they're hoping that it'll just be a continuous flow of folks that can come in and be a part of Alex's fundraising day. There'll be prizes, of course, 50-50 raffles. There'll be 50-50 that happens probably every hour. And then there'll be food served, and my chapter will be out there. I know that the Vietnam vets from Chapter 154, I've made sure that they all know and hope to get some support from them out there that day.
You'll get support from 154.
I'm sorry?
You'll get support from 154.
Yes, they are. They've always been there for us, and they truly are making it a point to take care of these young kids. They have a lot of passion for what's going on today, and that's a definite positive thing.
Give us that address again and your telephone number.
That address is 8311 Wilson Drive, and that's Shelby Township. And it's at the VFW Hall. It's on Van Dyke. Actually, it's just off of Van Dyke between 24 and 25 Mile Road.
Okay.
And my number that I can be reached at is 586-615-9975. If any of your listeners are looking for any more additional information or how we can get them out to come out and spend a little bit of time with this fundraiser, we'd be happy to let them know.
Give us your full name again.
My name is Brad, last name Cook, C-O-O-K.
What did you do in the military, Brad?
I spent about 5.5 years in the Army. I spent about 5.5 years actually in the Air Force. I was in Desert Storm back in 90-91, and about 6-8 months after that is when I retired. Okay. And got on with life, and about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, the president of 154, who is a Wolverine Hog Chapter member, which I also belong to, we found that bikers are very generous people and very active with veterans, and I've been involved with them, and he came to me and asked me if I would be willing to get this organization up and running, and I told them I thought it was time.
Okay, good deal. And for people that didn't get a chance to write that down, send an email to Veterans Radio at veteransradio.net, and we will email the information to you. We want to see a lot of people turn out and support this young man who lost his legs for us, gave up his tomorrows for us. And Brad Cook, thank you so much for being on Veterans Radio.
Well, thank you, Gary. I appreciate your time this afternoon.
You're welcome, and welcome home.
Thank you, sir, as you too.
Are we going to a break right now, Bob, or are we going to the Welcome Home?
Well, right now we're going to go to Welcome Home, Gary. Welcome Home each week on Veterans Radio. We welcome home servicemen and women who, in the service of our country, have been stationed around the world. Dateline, South Carolina. A celebration after a year apart began as friends and family gathered at armories across the strait to welcome home members of the South Carolina Army National Guard's 218th Brigade from a deployment in Afghanistan. The soldiers, part of the state's largest single-unit deployment since World War II, are the first of some 1,600 South Carolina Guard members returning home through mid-May. Dateline, Boston. After a year of waiting and worrying, local soldiers' families got to say, welcome home to their loved ones. 60 Army reservists from the 719th Movement Control Battalion spent 13 months overseas, 9 of those months in Iraq. Dateline, Rochester, Minnesota. Police and fire crews escorted 17 Army Reserve soldiers with the 79th Military Police Company who returned from 11 months in Baghdad, Iraq. The soldiers working at Camp Victory in Baghdad, where General David Petraeus was stationed, were elements of the 79th Military Police Company. They've been deployed for more than any other military company in Minnesota. Congratulations, guys. Welcome home. Dateline, Bainbridge, Georgia. Troops from the 78th Troop Command and the 110th C SSB, that's Charlie Sierra Sarah Bravo, were released to the waiting arms of families and friends. The unit, known as the Road Hogs, came home to an official welcome home ceremony and a job well done from Lieutenant Colonel Roy Wood. Their mission was to transport equipment and supplies. They traveled over 1.8 million miles, supporting both combat and local missions. Dateline, Fort Stewart, Georgia. 300 soldiers from the 3rd Infantry Division, the members of the 1st Brigade Combat Team, arrived in Fort Stewart to an emotional homecoming scene. The soldiers marched through cottonwood trees onto Control Field to awaiting families who had rushed in to greet them. The unit had been in Iraq for the past 15 months. Dateline, Delvin, Illinois. Hundreds of American flags were waving in Delvin to welcome home the town's National Guard troops. 50 soldiers with the 1144 Transportation Motor Transport Battalion had waited a year for this moment after serving overseas in Kuwait.
We're back with Veterans Radio. We've got a caller just asked where that benefit is for the young troop who lost his legs. It's in Shelby Township at Van Dyke, and the address is 8311 Wilson Drive. And for information, call Brad Cook at 586-615-9975. Now, for anybody else that wants that information, go to veteransradio.net, send us an email, and we'll email that back to you. Glad to hear that there's some people out there already wanting to help. Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier was a hearing that was held in Detroit by, what year was that, 1972 or 71. It was held by members of the Vietnam Veterans Against the War, hosted by John Kerry, who was then an unknown, funded by Jane Fonda with the several concerts that she put on. And there was a lot of things that came out of Winter Soldier that created a reputation, a bad reputation for Vietnam vets that continues to this day. And recently there was a Winter Soldier 2 hearing held. We're going to talk about both of those, and right now we're going to talk to Scott Swett about Winter Soldier 1 that took place in Detroit. Good morning, Scott.
Hi, Gary. How you doing?
Well, I'm terrific, thank you, and I'm feeling on top of the world, being able to get the word out. Tell us what your position is with Winter Soldier.
Well, I wrote the website wintersoldier.com in 2004, early during the presidential campaign that, of course, featured John Kerry, a key participant in that event. And the idea of the website was to shed some light on the propaganda campaign that the Vietnam Veterans Against the War and Kerry and Fonda and a number of other radicals put together to try and convey the idea to the public that that American troops in Vietnam were committing war crimes routinely and on a widespread basis, which of course is not the case.
Okay, let's cover it right up front. My Lai. Everybody knows about My Lai. My Lai happened, but what I tell students when I'm talking to them is what's notable about My Lai is the fact that it's notable. The other side, that was their modus operandi, to go in and wipe out villages, especially up in the mountains where the hill tribes were. But that doesn't excuse it for our guys doing it. And a lot of troops feel that the officers' heads should roll. A good friend of mine said, I can understand the rage that took place that caused people to want to do it, but that's why we have officers to prevent it.
Well, exactly. If My Lai had in fact been a standard policy for the U.S., we would never know the name. The fact is that it was a very unusual event in the war. Nonetheless, it gave the leftists tremendous propaganda lever to use against the U.S. by saying that this was how all of the millions of troops in Vietnam were conducting themselves.
So what was the purpose of Winter Soldier, and how did it get its name?
Well, the name Winter Soldier came. It was a play on the term summer soldier, which was used by Thomas Paine in one of his famous essays during the Revolutionary War. And the purpose of it, of course, was to convey war crimes propaganda. The event was, in theory, organized by disgruntled veterans, but what is less widely known is the extent to which top leaders of the radical left who had already met with North Vietnamese leaders in Hanoi were involved. Tom Hayden was there, Sidney Peck, who is the leader of the National Coalition Against War, Racism, and Repression, Howard Zinn, Richard Falk. All these people had made the pilgrimage to North Vietnam to coordinate their efforts with North Vietnamese leaders. And, we're very much invested in trying to help the other side win the war.
And for those in the Ann Arbor area who think of Tom Hayden as only a congressman from Southern California, he's a University of Michigan graduate who was the editor of the Michigan Daily during his time here. What was the method of conducting the Winter Soldiers? What did they do?
It was a 3-day conference held in Howard Johnson's outside of Detroit from January 31st to February 2nd of 1971. And what they did was they had about 100 guys get up and tell horrific stories about atrocities that they said they had either witnessed or participated in. Later investigations showed that while most of these men were in fact in the military, a majority of them were not in combat. And when the U.S. Army, for example, investigated the claims that they had made, many retracted their stories, and most of the others were completely unable to provide any evidence to support them. So it's quite clear this was a propaganda event. It was not an attempt to shed light on what was actually happening on the ground in Vietnam.
Well, this is a hot issue. We've got a caller on the line already. Roger, is it? Put him through, Bob. Roger, you called into Veterans Radio?
No, this is Lauren from Western New York on line one.
Okay. Hi, Lauren.
Yeah, good morning, Gary. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Your last caller there's got it right on the money about that Winter Soldiers program. It was definitely proven that most of these guys were frauds right from the get-go. It was a propaganda move, is what it was. And I one time did an article in the American Legion magazine about that, telling basically John Kerry should name the names. And if at that time he was reserve lieutenant in the United States Navy, he had an obligation at that time, if he knew of war crimes committed, he had an obligation to turn these names over for prosecution. There's no statute of limitations on war crimes. If he knew about any, he should have done something about it. He claims that even his crew was involved in things like this, and which begs the question, who was in command of his vessel? Was it the boatswain's mate or was it himself? If he could not control his own 5-man crew on a swift boat from committing atrocities, how could he ever think he could be commander-in-chief of the Armed Forces of the United States? That's one question right there. But as far as factually, nothing he said stood up to any kind of inquiries at all. When they went to looking into these things, as your last caller stipulated, none of these things could be borne out. And that's not the way American troops acted anyway. I served over there with the United States Marine Corps. We went into villages. Our corpsmen set up shop to inoculate the villagers and the children. We dug wells. We worked on the pacification program. There was a $250 fine for shooting a water buffalo. We didn't have to be told what it would be for shooting an unarmed civilian. I mean, we just knew this. I never witnessed anything like this. I served with honorable men and under honorable men, and I just can't imagine anything like this going on with professional soldiers.
Lauren, thank you very much for phoning in. You voiced the opinion of almost everybody I've ever talked to that served in Vietnam. Thanks again, Lauren.
Yeah, I certainly hope people put that in perspective with today's troops, too, when they start hearing the same thing, because the same kind of people are going to be out here to do the same thing.
And they're doing it. We're going to talk about that later on. Thanks again. Thanks again, Lauren.
Bye-bye.
I'd like to comment on that if I could.
Sure, please.
Of course, the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth in 2004 made exactly the same point that the caller just emphasized, which was that they served right with Kerry in boats next to him, and in one case his own gunner, and they strenuously denied that the Brownwater Navy was committing those sorts of acts, and they deeply resented Kerry's testimony to the contrary. I would like to point out, though, that Kerry didn't exactly admit to committing war crimes. What he did instead was pretend that fairly routine military actions were wrong or criminal. He said, yes, I committed the same sorts of atrocities that thousands of other soldiers did, in that I took part in shooting in free fire zones, I conducted harassment and interdiction fire, I used .50 caliber machine guns, which we were granted an order to use, and so forth. But this was all part of the standard VVAW propaganda. They wanted people to think that free fire zones and harassment and interdiction fire were euphemisms for slaughtering civilians, when in fact they were what the military calls fire control measures. The free fire zone was essentially a way to coordinate between multiple groups that were sharing a battle area without having to go through a higher authority. So what they were counting on was that people wouldn't understand that these ominous-sounding terms really didn't mean what the VVAW tried to convince people that they did mean.
When these people testified, they were their testimony was entered into Congress. It was delivered to them by John Kerry.
Well, not actually by Kerry. It was read into the record by a senator.
Right.
By read into the record, he just mentions it, and then they print it out.
Correct, but I mean, who delivered it to the senator?
Well, Kerry testified on behalf of the Winter Soldier charges in April of 1971 in front of the Senate committee, Fulbright's Committee on Foreign Relations. And that's the event that made him famous. And the reason it did was because at the time, of course, the mainstream media just consisted of 3 networks. And they all shone a bright spotlight on Kerry's testimony. They treated everything that the VVAW said as though it was real and had been checked out. Okay. And in general gave tremendous credibility to these completely unverified and unsubstantiated charges without doing even the most basic work of investigation.
Okay, let's talk about that. The show's not about Kerry, it's about Winter Soldier, and it's about the people that testified at Winter Soldier. How many people testified there?
About 110.
And all of them turned in notarized statements?
No, none of them turned in affidavits or sworn statements of any sort.
Okay.
Although Kerry repeatedly promised that they would. That never happened.
Okay. So were any of these people subsequently investigated?
Well, it depends on what you mean by investigated. Once the charges became public and famous through Kerry's agency, the military was tasked with investigating the charges that were made at Winter Soldier, and they proceeded to do so in detail. We don't have the reports from the Navy Investigative Services, but we do have a summary that was written in the book American Vietnam by the historian Gunter Louie, and he said that the charges fell apart under investigation, that some of the people that were there were not who they claimed to be, and
so stolen identity?
There were a couple of cases, he said, that where they contacted the people who had supposedly spoken there, and they said they were not ever in Detroit.
Okay. We got 15 seconds left. How many of those people were actually in Vietnam that testified? 8 seconds.
Probably most of them, but the key isn't whether they were there, it's whether they were telling the truth.
Okay, we're going to a break now, and we'll be back right after these messages. We're going to be wrapping up Winter Soldier 1 and going to Winter Soldier 2. You're listening to Veterans Radio.
The Medal of Honor is the highest award for valor in combat given a member of the Armed Forces of the United States. There have been over 3,400 recipients of the nation's highest award. This is one of them. Specialist George Ingalls threw himself on a live grenade to save his comrades. Details after this. Ingalls accompanied his squad on a night ambush mission in Vietnam. Shortly after the ambush was established, an enemy soldier entered the killing zone and was shot when he tried to evade capture. Other enemy soldiers were expected to enter the area, and the ambush was maintained in the same location. 2 quiet hours passed without incident. Suddenly, a hand grenade was thrown from the nearby dense undergrowth into the center of the squad's position. The grenade did not explode, but shortly thereafter, a second grenade landed directly between Ingalls and a nearby comrade. Although he could have jumped to a safe position, Ingalls, in a spontaneous act of great courage, threw himself on the grenade and absorbed its full blast. The explosion mortally wounded him, but his heroic action saved the lives of the remaining members of his squad. The Medal of Honor series is a production of Veterans Radio.
Okay, we're back on Veterans Radio, and we're talking about Winter Soldier with Scott Swett. Scott, we're going to wrap this up, and then we're going to be going to Winter Soldier 2 with George Mellinger. But first off, you have a website. What is the website called?
wintersoldier.com.
And it would be Winter Soldier plural or singular?
Singular. Okay,
wintersoldier.com. I've gone through it a number of times, and I see a section on FBI files. This is for a history buff. This is tremendous. How many files do you have on there, and what might somebody find?
I think there's something over 20,000 pages of files which represent the FBI's investigation into the actions of the Vietnam veterans against the war in the early 1970s.
Are there any real firebombs in there?
Well, there's a lot of interesting information. Some of it touches on the VVAW's discussion of whether to assassinate half a dozen pro-war United States senators, which took place in late 1971. So I would say that's fairly explosive.
What about KGB involvement? Is there anything that touches on that?
Not directly. However, there is a great deal that connects the VVAW to the leaders of the Viet Cong and also the North Vietnamese communists.
Well, I really, Scott, I thank you for being on, and I really would like people, whether they're doubters or believers, to go to wintersoldier.com. There's a wealth of information, and if you take time and look it over, you may change your mind, you may not change your mind, or you may reinforce positions that you already have. But go to wintersoldier.com. And if you have questions, email us at veteransradio.net. Scott Swett, thank you very much for being on Veterans Radio.
Gary, thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Right now we want to have George Mellinger on the phone. George, you're an expert on Winter Soldier 2, or you're a self-taught expert. Tell me about your background.
Well, my background is that I'm another of the Vietnam vets, but due to circumstances, I was allowed to attend the Winter Soldier 2 hearings in Washington this March. So that's my basic expertise.
Tell us who organized those.
Pardon?
Tell us who organized those.
All right.
Hearings.
Back in, I believe it was July of 2006, members of the old Vietnam Veterans Against the War, the VVAW, at one of their annual get-togethers, decided to organize a group called Iraqi Veterans Against the War, which was modeled on the old VVAW. This organization, the IVAW, Iraqi Veterans Against the War, was essentially founded by the VVAW and was modeled on them. And in most other respects, from their political orientation to their mode of operation, they resembled a younger version of VVAW.
And were there the older Vietnam Veterans Against the War in attendance?
At this conference, yes, they certainly were.
How big was the room?
Pardon?
How big was the room?
I'm pretty poor on estimating sizes of rooms, but they essentially took over for 4 days the Kirkland Center at the George Meany Labor College in Bethesda.
The George Meany.
Pardon?
The George Meany.
It was the National Labor College.
Labor College. Okay. And
the building was essentially turned over to this IVAW hearings. The informal impression I had was that the VVAW was probably slightly more numerous than their younger IVAW proteges, and they certainly seemed to be the ones who were in charge, both as advisors and guides, and also as security.
Okay, what revelations came out of this hearing?
The essential revelation that came out, to cut right to the bottom line, is war is unpleasant, and people get hurt, and if you're fighting anywhere where there are civilians are going to get caught in the crossfire and injured. I think anybody who's ever been in any other war knows this as a matter of fact. It's a sad and reprehensible the truth, but it's always been that way, and nothing was brought out at Winter Soldier 2 that suggested anything else. I heard no evidence of anything that could possibly be construed as an actual war crime or deliberate atrocity.
And you sat there through how many of the hearings?
I spent the entire of Friday at the hearings. I did not return on Saturday because the panels that were up for discussion there were such that they did not seem to promise any potential of revealing further atrocities.
What was the title of the panel that you attended?
I attended four different panels, and I believe the first title was on let's see, it was Rules of Engagement, Part 1. And then there was the Crisis in Veterans Health Care, the Corporate Pillaging and Military Contractors, and Rules of Engagement, Part 2. These were the panels where the participants promised to deliver their tales of atrocity.
So, two of the panels were Rules of Engagement 1 and Rules of Engagement 2. Our military has always had rules of engagement, which has frustrated our troops in battle at times. And early in the Vietnam War, even when fired upon, they had to get permission to fire back. And that's the case even in Gulf War I, where they were being fired on and had to get permission to fire back because it was inside a populated area. You can say these are anecdotal, but I talked to people that were there. So for the people listening who thinks that it's a Wild West show, there are rules of engagement in combat. Is that right?
Absolutely. And the fact is, as in Vietnam, as you and I both know, these rules of engagement tended to be restrictive. In many cases, they kept people from taking action, which might have protected their own safety, and might have reduced our own casualties, though at the risk of civilian casualties.
What was the worst example that you heard about the closest to an atrocity, or what atrocity did you hear about at Winter Soldier 2?
There was one incident, one individual discussed an occasion where he shot a particular
opinions
Iraqi
expressed on this program are those
civilian,
of our guests,
someone
and are not
he
necessarily
referred to
those
as
of Veterans
quote,
Radio
fat
or
man,
this station.
Unquote. And
Veterans Radio is a production of Veterans
from his
Radio,
description
LLC.
of the incident, it sounded to me as if this was something which could have been a basis for investigation or even trial, had it been verifiable. In terms of verifiable, we mean we want to know where it happened precisely, when it happened, who was involved, were there any other witnesses who could confirm that it happened. Basic proof as contrasted with made up or imagined war stories.
Did that man or woman report it at the time that it happened?
Apparently not, and apparently also, and let me also
I can't say I blame him.
State at this point that that none of the charges that were made at Winter Soldier 2 were allowed to were willing to be testified to or signed under oath.
But, and giving them a little bit of benefit of the doubt there, had I done something in a war, and if it was accidental or if it wasn't accidental, I mean, I don't know that I'd sign a statement to it saying, yes, I'm a murderer, because the penalties are harsh in the military. Military law is a lot different than civilian law, and people don't quite comprehend it. And if you are found guilty of something like that, and you're sent away for a long time, and it's not an easy life.
Absolutely not. But if you are not willing to actually back up your stories, you shouldn't go forward and produce them as public tales.
I agree with you on that, and I believe that everybody should be investigated if they are making that type of a statement. You're listening to Veterans Radio. We're going to be going to our last break, and we want you to stay on and hear the rest of Winter Soldier 2. And you're back on Veterans Radio. We're listening to George Mellinger talking about Winter Soldier 2. Before we go any further, I do want to say that I sent out emails to members of Vietnam Veterans Against the War and Iraq Veterans Against the War. I went to a couple of websites and I posted on there that this show was going to be playing, and that included our telephone number. So there's been a lot of effort to get these people to phone in and give their side of the story. Haven't heard from anybody yet, but we're going to give out our telephone number right now in case somebody wants to call in and comment one way or the other. Veterans Radio is 877-573-7825. 877-573-7825. And we're back with George Mellinger. George, you were allowed to enter that room, and were you allowed to tape the hearings?
No, this was one of the controversial things. We were not allowed to tape. We were also supposedly not allowed to take film or other photographs. They were very restrictive about who they allowed to enter and how they treated us while we were there. There was at least one individual who was in charge of the program from IVAW who did treat us very fairly, who let us in, who assured that we were treated well while we were there. However, other IVAW members and officials treated us as if we were an obviously hostile force. A couple of the other bloggers who were in attendance even were escorted to and from the bathroom.
Okay.
There were guards stationed throughout the building in front of virtually any and all doors to make sure that nobody went where they were not permitted to be.
Okay, so you're a blogger, and there were other bloggers there. What is your blog site?
My blog site is called veteranamericans.com.
Would you email that to us at veteransradio.net so that we can respond for anybody else that wants to find your blog site?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll do that as soon as we get off the air.
Good deal. You go to veteransradio.net, send us an email with the link to your website, and we'll send it out to anybody. Incidentally, talking about these confessions, it brought to mind the very, very famous case during the Vietnam War, a photograph that everybody remembers that just tears at their heart of a napalm strike had taken place on a village, and a young girl who was probably about 9 or 10 years old was running away from the village towards a cameraman. Her clothes were burned off of her. Her arms were out, and she had been badly burned by napalm. Horrible, horrible photograph, horrible incident. The assumption was always made that it was American planes that had dropped that napalm. It was not. It was a totally South Vietnamese Air Force operation, including the airstrike. The forward ground observer called in the airstrike. Now, not long ago, that lady who is now a lady and was managed to get out of Vietnam and lives in Canada, where she's married and had kids, she was invited to speak at the Wall in Washington, D.C. And while she was there, a man came up to her crying and apologizing to her that he was the one that called in the airstrike. Made national news, and she forgave him, and it was just a unbelievable story. Well, it was an unbelievable story. Turned out he was a fraud. He didn't call in the airstrike. He wasn't anywhere near that part of Vietnam. What do we have here? Does that relate to any of these people that are claiming that they have committed atrocities?
Absolutely. This is one of those things that has been a personal, a spiritual mystery to me, is why people want to advance such unfortunate claims about themselves, or even to pretend to be what they are not. But the truth is, there are large numbers of fake veterans. We call them wannabes. Individuals who have either little or no military service, who advance unusual claims of either heroism or, more often, atrocities in their own behalf. This was one of the things that actually got us set up and brought in to the Winter Soldier. In the wake of these, in preceding these hearings, there had been a number of claims by veterans or supposed veterans of being perpetrators of atrocities and crimes. Jesse Macbeth is probably the best-known example, who produced a video on the internet claiming to be a ranger who had committed atrocities, killed several hundred people. But almost as soon as he released his claims, real veterans started debunking them. They noticed that the uniform he was wearing was completely bogus and wrong. He didn't know the language or the slang of American troops, and it turns out that he had served 44 days in basic training before being thrown out of the Army as unsuitable, and later was convicted and sentenced to prison for defrauding the VA and wearing medals to which he was not entitled. It was because of people such as him,
right,
that we began looking very closely at the IVAW hearings that were supposed to be upcoming, and informing the IVAW that we would be checking the bona fides very carefully of anybody and everyone who testified.
Well, there was a fellow that made a lot of appearances with John Kerry, and I had it brought up to me a couple of years ago. The guy was outside the hearings there, the Winter Soldier hearings, and he said, "I'll never forget the pilot who was in his wheelchair and had been paralyzed, and the terrible testimony he gave of what happened to him." Well, folks, if you ever came across a photograph with that pilot, let me tell you, he was not on. He never flew over North Vietnam. He was a loadmaster on a C-130. There's no proof that it ever even flew over Vietnam, let alone landed in Vietnam. And he's in a wheelchair because he hurt his back in a basketball game. And he was one of the main people giving testimony there at Winter Soldier. And so keep that in mind when you see any photograph of Winter Soldier 1. And a basic question for you to ask yourself is, if you believe that the average American soldier can commit atrocities, you have to believe that you can. Think about it. If atrocities are committed in the insanity of war, the people that go off to the military are normal people. And if they can commit an atrocity, so can you. You have it in your own self to commit the atrocity.
Gary, that is an excellent point.
So
excellent.
We're coming up on a couple of minutes. Give us some of your last thoughts. And this is a free talk zone right now, George.
Okay. I would like to point out that there were only 800 people who joined IVAW. And that is out of about over 1.5 million Americans who have actually been sent to the combat theater. I checked the IVAW website, and only about 140 of those 800 individuals had their profiles posted. And of those 140 people who posted their own profiles and stories publicly, only about 3/4 of them had actually been deployed. The other quarter were people who had served in the United States or in Europe or someplace where they had never even gotten near the Middle East. And of that 75%, that include who actually saw the desert most of them were in non-combat positions. One of the leaders of IVAW spent his war in base camp, changing slides on PowerPoint projections for the general. This is a man who really has no basis for any direct atrocity stories, but he can make up atrocity stories or pass along second or third hand rumors, and that is essentially what the IVAW hearings were all about.
Okay,
made up
George,
stories and rumors.
We're going to have you send your contact information, your blog site to us at Veterans Radio. George Mellinger, I appreciate your being on Veterans Radio. Scott Swett, thank you very much. Support those sponsors and keep Veterans Radio on the air. And if you want to sponsor, give us a phone call or go to our website and email us. Until next week, you are dismissed.